So we've been talking, started a series a few weeks ago in the book of Nehemiah, and we've been talking about this idea that really we recognize that in our lifetimes we're going to bump into moments kind of throughout our lives where we have to kind of decide, am I going to embrace this thing or not? Am I going to have courage to kind of enter in and show up for the moment that God has placed me in, right? And we know some of those moments are kind of bigger than others. And eventually we kind of find ourselves at times when there's a lot required of us to enter into that moment fully and kind of be there. And a guy named Nehemiah in the Old Testament is an unbelievable, incredible example of what it looks like to have courage for the moment that God put him in. And I think we can learn a ton from him and kind of follow his story. And so if you've missed the last few weekends, or maybe this is your first time, and you want to catch up online, you can do that on our YouTube channel. Subscribe there if you want to, and you can just catch all those conversations. But here's kind of what we've been saying for the last few weeks. Nehemiah was in a unique situation where he had some freedom and some unique permission where he was disconnected from his homeland and his home people in Jerusalem in Israel, and he was disconnected from it, and he knew that it was kind of a mess back home, that his people were in a bad spot, and it was physically kind of destroyed in ruins. And so he really got a burden on his heart to go back and help his people, and help physically rebuild the walls of the city. And back in the ancient world, if a city didn't have walls to it, it was extremely vulnerable. Like you could literally just walk in and create havoc if there was no kind of physical fortress. And so that was a passion of his, to make sure that the people of God were secure and that they were able to kind of rebuild an identity and to have some security from kind of neighboring nations. And that would be a symbol of strength and security and even kind of thriving as a people. And so he wanted to go help them. When he began to get that burden, that vision, we talked last week about the reality that he didn't just immediately jump in and begin working on it. At least he didn't go up and show up there right away. He had to go through a time of waiting. And we talked about what that looks like last week. What does it look like to be in the waiting room, right? And we said that a lot of us have spent time in the waiting room. We might be there right now, where it's not yet time for the vision that we have to kind of show up in an opportunity. And when we're in the midst of waiting, God does things as we wait on him. And a really important conversation we had last week. If you missed that one, make sure to catch it. And today what we're going to do is kind of shift a little bit into the actual work. Like, what does it look like when they began to do the work of rebuilding the walls and the gates? How did that play out? And what was kind of the practical reality of it? And what are maybe some lessons we can draw from it as well? So here's where we're going to pick up right where we left off last week in Nehemiah 2 and 17. This is kind of the response. Nehemiah lays out the kind of the vision of what he sees needing to happen. It says, they say, hey, let us start rebuilding. So they began this good work. And they said, hey, we're going to do it. They jump into it. He has everything ready and prepared, and then people could just kind of enter in and take part in it. And let me just kind of give you a vibe of what it's like, because there's a lot of detail in the book of Nehemiah. We're not going to spend time in kind of the details down in the minutia of it. I want to give us a big picture of it, but I want to at least show a few examples of what it was like for them. Here's some examples in Nehemiah 3. It says, the men of Jericho built the adjoining section, and Zakur, son of Imri, built next to them. Goes on, says, next to him, the repairs were made by Levites under Raham, son of Bani. Beside him, Hashabiah, ruler of the half-district of Kaliah, carried out repairs for his district. Next to him, the repairs were made by their fellow Levites under Binu, son of Henadad, ruler of the other half-district of Kaliah. Let me just pause here. We'll get some more of this detail here in a second, but here's kind of what's going on to kind of give us a visual, at least a conceptual idea of how this would look and work. The idea is this, that as they go to rebuild the walls and the gates, what they would do is they would kind of look at what was in front of their physical homes or their space that they were in, and then they would work on that section, And then the people next to them would kind of take responsibility for the adjoining section, the next part. And we don't know exactly what it was like to rebuild these, what materials they used precisely, but we have a good idea that almost for sure there would be rock, maybe limestone, and they would take rock and make mortar, and they would literally physically rebuild the wall or the gates that are in front of their property, right? And what the picture that Nehemiah begins to paint for us, Nehemiah and the author here begin to paint for us is this idea of everybody kind of doing their part to take responsibility for their section of the wall or the gate or whatever it is that they were working on. And that's kind of what he describes here as he's talking through it. It's next to him, this person worked. Next to him, this person worked. And he kind of walks us through what that looks like. It says, Ezra, son of Jeshua, ruler of Mizpah, repaired another section from a point facing the ascent to the armory as far as the angle of the wall. Next to him, Baruch, son of Zabiah, it's close, zealously repaired another section. I just love that that's included. You get all these like lists of names, and then you're like, then there was that guy, right? There's always that guy that's just like pro level worker, right? So he's zealously repairing it, putting all his heart into it, super working on the thing, right? So he says, from the angle of the entrance to the house of Eliashib, the high priest, next to him, Meremoth, son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, repaired another section from the entrance of Eliashib's house to the end of it. So you just get this idea, right, that these people are just taking ownership and they're taking responsibility for their section of the work, right? And then every once in a while you get some details, right? This guy's caffeinated. He's the zealous one, right? So he's really going for it, right? And then here we go. Here's another piece that we see. Shalom, son of Halohesh, ruler of a half district of Jerusalem, repaired the next section with the help of his daughters. And here's kind of this picture that we get is that there's everybody is kind of in on this thing, right? You get the daughters are even a part of the work. They're right. That hair is fantastic. Don't laugh. Stop it, right? Flying nun. I heard that. Okay, so right. Right, the whole family is going after the work here. It's amazing, and then you always get this kind of detail as well, which is really helpful and realistic. The next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa, but their nobles would not put their shoulders to the work under their supervisors. You're like, we got to tell on you here in the work, right? So there's people doing the work, and then there's always, it's just realistic. There's always some people that are going to be beneficiaries. They're going to benefit from what's happening, but they themselves aren't willing to show up and do a little bit of the work. They're not, I like how they say it, they're not willing to put their shoulder under it. Right? And so you see these different perspectives and different roles that are playing out as Nehemiah is helping kind of move a group of people to accomplish something that there's no way that they could accomplish individually. No one of these, including Nehemiah, could do this on their own in about a 52-day window, that they would rebuild all of this. And we're going to see this in the week to come here, even in the midst of opposition. And they would do it because everybody just simply took ownership for their part. That's it. They did their part. Right? Some people would do a lot, Mr. Zealous here. Some people would do basically nothing, and everybody else would kind of do the part that they could do. And as they did that, this incredible feat would take place, and then Jerusalem's, it's going to be different than it was before. It was in ruins, it was in disgrace, the people were disheartened, they found courage, and now the thing is different. And it gave them this starting point on which to function and begin to really get some momentum and rebuild as a people. And most of the most of the reality and the benefit of what they would do really wouldn't even happen in their lifetimes. Most of it would happen after. And in fact, when you think about the gravity of what's happening here in this work, eventually, hundreds of years, 400 plus years later, the Son of God would come and die and pay for the sins of the world right outside of the city that's being built here. Right? It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Did they know all that? For sure, no. Right? They wouldn't have understood all of the gravity of what was happening. It was just their moment. And they had the decision do we jump in and embrace this moment with courage or not? Right? It's kind of the question that they had in front of them. And I love just putting ourselves kind of in the skin of the people that are in this picture a little bit, right? Because these are, we don't know many details. We get a few of them, which is fun, but these people are real people, right? I imagine they had stresses. I imagine some of them had financial stress or relational stress. Or they're dealing with a sick family member. They probably had things going on in their life. We don't know for sure, but we can imagine that they had some stuff going on before Nehemiah shows up and calls them to this big work. Things that consumed their minds and their thoughts and their dreams, and then now they're being asked to embark on this work that would take kind of an extra investment of their time and their energy and their resources and their heart and their passion, right? And because most of them jumped in and did it, things became different. And I love thinking about the reality of how this would work, because when you look back at it in history, it feels glamorous and a little, right, it's kind of amazing. It's glorious to think about, wow, they rebuilt all the wall. The whole thing was different after that, right? Wow, they mobilized and had this big moment. And let's just put ourselves in the reality of it. If you're just, whatever, this one dude whose name I can't pronounce, working on your section of the wall, what that really boils down to in the nitty-gritty of real life is that guy had to take some rock and mix some mortar and put a piece of a wall together. If you got real cynical for a minute, if that guy did, or if we imagined it this way, he could have looked at it and said, really all I'm doing is moving some rock around. That's all. That's like all that's really. Is this really going to change anything? Me adding another few inches or feet to this section of this one wall and this one, what is this going to do in the big picture, in the big scheme of things? If we got real cynical, we could ask it that way. He could have asked it. They could have asked it. Maybe they did. We don't have any idea. But the reality is, big, amazing things happen, but they don't happen in big and amazing ways. It happens when a whole bunch of people do seemingly small, sometimes even mundane actions, everyday actions. But when you compile all those together, what happens is you look back over time and go, wow, how did that even happen? This is mind-blowing. And I got to tell you, we are in the middle of a moment like this. Right? We are in a Nehemiah moment. And I am so thankful for you, like for the people of the campus, the people of Grace, because the reality is what is happening is absolutely mind-blowing. When I tell people, and this happens all the time, I tell people the story, because, right, they bump into me and, hey, Ryan, good to see you, haven't seen you in a while. Hey, what's going on at the campus? Tell me the story. And I start telling them the story of how, multiple cores of churches came together and free buildings and renovation and all these volunteers out, and they just look at me like, what are you, how did this happen over this is like 4 years, man. This isn't that much time. How is this possible? And there's a wonder, and it's a mind-blowing thing to behold what God is doing through you. And I need to talk and tell you about it because it's hard to see it from any one vantage point, what is happening behind the scenes. So over the last bunch of weeks and months, and maybe the last year even, there have been, I wish I would have counted them, there have had to have been thousands, multiple thousand hours volunteered between people working on this building, working on cleaning out the new building, people renovating all of it, people ripping out, and people putting up drywall, and people painting, and people doing, and people looking and saying, we'll do, this is the part that we have to offer, and we're in. And all the while as that has happened, people have continued to be the church week in and week out as we have done that. Somebody is watching our kids back there and teaching them about Jesus. So somebody made our coffee that we're sipping this morning. They got here early, and we don't even know who it was. It's beautiful, right? It's wonderful. Thank you for the coffee. Right? It's awesome. Somebody was out in the parking lot saying, hey, park here, right? Somebody's showing up in these moments, and many of us don't even realize that those people even exist. We don't even realize that people would make decisions in a specific way because they're part of something. I had somebody talk to me even this week and say, man, I'm considering a job offer, but I don't think I would want to take me away from my church family. What? Who does that? Who thinks that way? Well, the people of God think that way. And that is what is happening among us. And by the way, we get the amazing, incredible privilege of being a part of a movement here at Grace. There's 8 campuses, right? If you didn't know that, we have 8 campuses of Grace Church. We're one of them. So you're one of a bunch of different services that are happening throughout the state and even out of state. There's a few campuses that are south of us. We benefit from the vision that we're a part of and the resources and the experience in all kinds of ways, and it helps us do things together better than we could ever do on our own. And you need to know this part, okay? That our campus is not funded by that beautiful movement that we're a part of. Our campus and everything that happens here on our campus is given by the people that come to the campus. There's no wonderful donor in the Bath campus that pays for the renovation or pays for our staff to exist, and we just get to benefit and be cheery, right? That's not a thing that's happening. You do that. We do that. As we do our part and do what we can, God has provided every piece of what has happened here. When we think about every piece of drywall that we're going to go look at, and there's a lot of pieces, right? Enormous amounts of drywall. When we go see the renovation, somebody here is paying for that, is giving their offering to see that move forward. And if we were cynical, we would say that's just a piece of drywall. That's just a piece of limestone. But the reality is when you add all that up, what happens is it creates something different. We had somebody, one of our staff members was walking somebody that was working on the building through, and they were just talking about like what's happening in the new space. And they were commenting, they were like walking through one of the hallways and like, man, there's like a lot of kids classroom, like kids, are these all for children? The person was like asking the staff member. And they were like, yeah, these are all for kids. They're like, wow. They're like, you guys must have a lot of kids then. And the staff person was like, babies. We just have a lot of babies. No, right? We have a lot of kids, right? We got a lot of kids. And then the person's like, they're like doing the math out loud in front of the staff person. They're like, and they said, so you must really like care about and value kids. And they were like, yes. Here's the thing, guys. We're not just redoing a building and putting some drywall and putting some stuff together. What we're doing is we're creating an environment where kids can hear about Jesus. We're creating an environment where kids can find a family to be a part of that knows and loves and cares about Jesus in a safe and wonderful community. Here's the thing. If you're here and you hear that what we're going to be doing as we move forward is investing in the next generation, investing in kids and students and fighting for the hearts and minds of the next generation, like if that doesn't fire you up, if it doesn't fire you up that we want to raise up leaders and start new churches from within this thing, and we want to see new communities impacted by groups of people moving and starting new churches, if that doesn't fire you up, to help people live life with Jesus every day, that what we're trying to do here is have real relationships with Jesus. We're not just trying to have a social club where we kind of fill some time together and feel good about ourselves. If it doesn't fire you up to be a real follower of Jesus, investing in the next generation and multiplying that in new churches, hear me. I love you. If that doesn't fire you up, you will not like it here. Because that's what we're doing. Okay, that's what we're doing. If you're like, man, I care, all I want is some tradition, and I want you to talk, Ryan, about what you're against more than what you're not going to like it. Here's what we're for. We're for the kingdom of God. We are for Jesus. We're for life change. We're for the next generation. We're for multiplication. If you want to see change happen in the world, yeah, I recommend it happens one person, one family, one community at a time. If you're in for that, you're in the right place. If not, I will help you find another church. I love you. Hear me. We got to pick, what wall are we trying to build? What do you want to be a part of? Here's the thing. We all, like these people, we all have a lot going on. And some of us are here right now and you're like, Ryan, man, my heart's there. I want to be in on that. But I have 3 little kids at home, or I got a brand new baby, or I'm in the middle of absolute chaos, and you would look and say, man, my ability to give myself and my time or my finances is very thin. Listen, this is not a guilt thing. Do you hear me? This is not a guilt thing. God is the one who meets the needs of the church. It's his church. He's the head of it. He's going to raise up what he needs for his church to grow and to thrive. And you'll have a time. If you want to invest, that time will come later in a bigger way. What we want to do is say, when everybody looks and says, man, here's my part I can do. And for some, it's going to be very small. And for some, it's going to be very large. Some of you are going to be the crazy zealous person, right? We have some of you, right? Sometimes I worry, okay? There's a few of you, Rich Messenger, right? You got... Rich has been incredible. He has organized all of the construction efforts of these projects, all volunteer. And I could name after name who have given deeply. But there are some of you who are going to be like, I've got, and he would look, to his defense, he would look and say, and I've got the space and the capacity, I'm able to do it. He hasn't always been able to, he's able to now. Some of you have very little, some of you are like, man, let me run. And a bunch of us, most of us, are like, here's what I got. I can give that Tuesday night. I could lead a community. I could be a part of a community. I'll be trained to work with the kids. I'll be a mentor for somebody in Restore. I could do this. I can be in the parking lot. I'll go through the class and I'll move the ball. I'll take the initiative. Ryan, here's what I'll do for you. I would love you if you said this. I won't make you chase me. I'll just sign up for the thing. I will love you in a special way, right? If you would just, whatever it is. A bunch of us are going to look and say, here's what I have to give. And give some time, I can give some money, I can give. And what our wall looks like today is it needs and it has lots of people giving a little bit. And when you put that all together, we look back on it and it's something supernatural. Here's what can't happen. Are you ready? Here's what can't happen. Here's what we can't do. I don't want us to think this way. I don't want us to look and say, well, you know what? I have so little to give. I don't, what I have to contribute in time or I can only really give about 15 minutes a week or maybe once a month. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to participate at all. Because it's not going to make a big difference if I do a little bit or if I don't do it at all. So I'm not going to do anything. I have so little to give. Was $15 a month really going to make an impact? My skills and my abilities and what God's gifted me, it's really not that important. So I don't think, I'm so afraid to move forward and take a risk and be developed and exposed that I need invested in. I'm not going to move forward. I'm just, right? My part isn't that important. What happens is if a huge chunk of us look and say, I'm not going to help, give, move forward, be a part, and here's all the reasons, because it's not that big of a deal. It's not that substantial. I'm not going to push past fear. If we do that, what happens is we're left with a big hole in the wall. Right? If we just cut this group of people out, there's just this gaping hole in the work. And here's why that's heartbreaking. The work's going to get done. It's not that. The work's going to get done. Here's the thing that I care about as a pastor. I care about what's missing in you and what's missing in us from you being absent. Does that make sense? Because when we work on it together, we become different. When we move forward in the work, it changes us. This group of people, when they went through this thing, they came out different. When I came to know Jesus, some of you guys know my story. I grew up as an atheist, came to know Jesus in college. I started at the Bath campus Bath campus, which is not far from here. Some of you guys are familiar with it. About probably 6 months after I came to know Jesus. The Bath campus was about 130 people at the time. It was small. It was strange. Pastor Jeff, our senior pastor, wore sweater vests. That almost ended it for me right there. Right? Some of you are like, I'm wearing a sweater vest right now. just kidding. I love you. Jesus loves you, right? There were pews. There was duct tape on the pews. They were torn. There was a leak in the roof. Things were strange, okay? But I remember being in the midst of that and recognizing, as a brand new follower of Jesus, like something's happening here. I didn't have the words yet to put it together. I was like, God is doing something here. That's what I would look back on now and say. And God did something there. God took that group of 130-ish people and he grew it and multiplied it, and people came to know Jesus and people got baptized and the staff grew, and I had the unbelievable privilege of living in that and living through that. And I'm different because of that. I got to see the hand of God move in a community in a way that was supernatural. And listen, even on staff and in the days of those decades that I spent there, most of the time, it looked like a mundane set of decisions. Show up and do this part. Give sacrificially in this way. Be in on the walls that we need to build in this moment. And as a group of people did that, what happened is God he birthed a movement. 6 campuses later, hundreds, thousands of people affected later. And what I want you all to know, what I want us to recognize, is that this is God's doing. God has us in a moment like that. And what I think he's doing is he's inviting us to be a part of it. It's a get to, not a have to. Right? It's a get to, not a have to. And the question is, do I want to be in on that? And not only do I want to, but how do I want to? And here's where I would love us to land today. I think we have to decide what part we're going to play in this thing. Right? We have the freedom and the ability, and we get to choose. If you want to be this person, you can. If you want to look and say, I don't really want to have anything to do with that, but I kind of want to be along for the ride, that's up to you, right? That's your decision. You can do that if you want. If you want to look at your scenario and say, man, what I have to do and be faithful to is limited, but here's how I can be a part. I want in. I don't know how much it really matters. You might even ask that. I don't even know if it matters that much, but I'm in, and here's what I can bring to the table. I'll bring my heart. I'll bring some time. If you have financial resources, that's fine. It's all going into the work. You might look and say, man, I can be this guy. I can go after it. I can go after it zealously. And I can be the person that really runs. And you might not even know what that means today. But guys, what we're moving into, this isn't a finish line once we move into a building. It's a starting line. What we're doing is we're building a foundation that we're going to be able to pivot, and what our conversations are going to turn into are how we can be outward, how we can live as a faithful church that's reaching the community more and more. I can't wait to talk about how we're going to reach kids and students more and more, how we're going to address the needs of our community in specific ways when hundreds of people move towards it, the impact it can have on it. But you got to have a place to meet first. You got to do that part first, right? So here's the question. Which part do you want to play? What's your role in it? And if you would look today and say, Ryan, I don't know yet what my line is, what I want to be responsible for, here's the question. Would you take initiative to find clarity on that answer? Would you own that? Right? I don't know how to engage it. I don't know what part to play. I don't know what my gifts are. I don't know where to start. Would you own getting the answer? This room has doubled and tripled over the last 3 years. Because we need you to move towards it and to be in. We can't chase you all, right? We need you to help, because I think there's probably going to be a few more people that are going to need our help. And we need people in to help bring that help to them. Would you own your line? Whether it's in kind of a normal way or it's a way that's a little different, would you consider this? Define it. Whether it's very small, if it's very big. And guys, as we look back in a year or 2 or 5 years, I think we're going to look back and say, that was supernatural. That was different. A whole bunch of people move towards a vision, very real in mundane ways. God does something supernatural, right? By simply being faithful with what God's called us to. I'm going to have the band come up. I would love for us to pray, think, and worship as we look at God's movement here among us. Father, we want to praise you that this is a conversation that we have the privilege of having today. Thank you, Lord, for your grace, that all of us stand before you only because of what Jesus has done, that he paid it all, and we now just receive forgiveness and life and inclusion into the family of God. Lord, as we look at that, we want to say thank you with our heart, our mind, our time, our energy. I pray, God, that you would give this group of people enormous courage. Lord, because we know one day we're going to stand before you face to face. So help us to value the things that we do with you and the things that we do for you, for your name's sake. Because at the end of the day, that's going to be really all that matters. Lord, would you move in our hearts and minds this morning? Help us to be your people. In your name we pray, Jesus.